This is Newsmax TV. I'm Ashley Martella. We're pleased to be joined by Republican political strategist and former White House counselor for George W. Bush, Ed Gillespie. Welcome, Ed.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's talk about the Republican U.S. Senate primary in Nevada first. A candidate comes out of virtually nowhere and upsets the party establishment candidate Sue Loudon and Las Vegas businessman Danny Tarkanian. The winner, Sharon Angle, had the backing of the Tea Party Express and the Club for Growth. What's your take on the outcome there?
Oh, I think that she ran a very disciplined campaign, and I think this is one of those examples of where the candidate who emerges from a very competitive primary has proven herself to have been the more effective candidate. And I think she's going to pose a serious challenge to Harry Reid, who remains mired in around the 40% re-elect range, which is when you've got 100% name ID and you've been in office as long as Harry Reid has been, that's a pretty dangerous place to be. And I think that Sharon Angle, brings some new energy and brings new people into the process. And in this election year, being the candidate who challenges the establishment, as she did in the Republican primary, and now will be doing in the general election, is a pretty good poll position.
Okay, you mentioned Harry Reid. Of course, the Democrat strategy is already pretty clear. They're out there depicting Angle as a loopy extremist fringe candidate. A Democrat operative has already launched a website ridiculing her. How do Republicans effectively counter that, Ed?
I think the fact is she's going to run on issues and concern over Harry Reid's leading the charge for this out-of-control federal debt, carrying the water for President Obama on a government takeover of our health care system, this wasteful stimulus package that has not resulted in lasting private sector jobs at all. His efforts to now try to take over the energy sector as well as the healthcare sector. The fact is the voters are going to make a decision here based on whether or not they believe Harry Reid has acted in the best interest of Nevada and the country, and he hasn't. A majority of the voters, I suspect, are going to conclude in Nevada. So I don't blame them for wanting to try to shift attention from Harry Reid and his record as Democratic leader of the United States Senate, working hand in glove with one of the most, the most liberal presidents in the history of the country, but it's not going to work.
Turning to California's Republican primary. First, the Senate race. Voters chose former Hewlett-Packard CEO Carly Fiorina to run against incumbent Democrat Barbara Boxer. Now, the Tea Party candidate there, Fiorina's opponent Chuck DeVore, did not win. Neither did former U.S. Representative Tom Campbell. Some speculate Republicans chose Fiorina because she's seen as a moderate, and with California being a very blue state, they figure she has a better chance of knocking out Boxer. Does that strategy make sense?
Well, I think Carly Fiorina proved herself also, again, a very tough competitive primary, and she proved herself to be a very strong candidate. And in terms of, her positions, I would say that she's, a common sense conservative, someone who knows that we're not going to grow our economy by raising taxes on jobs and investment. We're not going to increase our prosperity by racking up mountains of debt and doubling it in 5 years and tripling it in 10, as this administration has done. She's someone, on issues in terms of traditional values is pretty close to where most Republicans are, and I think that she's going to be a very effective challenger to Barbara Boxer in November, who is very vulnerable. I think voters look at Barbara Boxer and think, what have you done for California in terms of helping us to stop the downward spiral we have been in, and the country for that matter too, with your votes for constant more regulation and higher taxes and excessive spending and debt. So I think that Carly Fiorina will be a very formidable candidate in November, and I think she could be the 50th or 51st Republican senator.
For California governor, the GOP chose another Silicon Valley superstar, Meg Whitman, to face Jerry Brown. Do you think Whitman will be the next governor of the country's largest state?
I do. I think California realizes that it has to act and act boldly to stop its downward spiral. It's driving businesses and high-income individuals out of the state, and it needs to attract new business. It needs to have reform of its government. It's got to break the iron clasp of the public sector employee unions, government employee unions, on California's government. It's got to have someone who's a bold leader who knows how to affect change and to lead as Meg Whitman has done. Someone who's innovative and smart and hardworking and knows something about creating jobs. So I think she's going to be, very attractive. She's a candidate of the future. The Democrats have Jerry Brown, a candidate of the past, who's going to go back to the same tired liberal policies that have resulted in the stagnation and the negative growth that we've seen in California. And California needs to be saved. And to a certain extent, I think what you're seeing there is what we saw in New Jersey, which is also a deep blue state. And last year, elected in Chris Christie, a reformer who is challenging the public employee unions and their stranglehold on New Jersey's budget and fighting off efforts by liberals to raise taxes even further in New Jersey, which is driving businesses and individuals out of the state. And I think that California is going to follow along a similar path. I think voters there are ready to say, you know what, we need to tip over the tables here. We need to try something new and different. We don't need an old school liberal politician, from the 80s and 70s. We need someone who understands the new economy and understands what it takes to create jobs.
Let's talk about Sarah Palin's clout in the primary. 3 of the 4 candidates she endorsed either won or moved on to a runoff. They're Carly Fiorina, Nikki Haley in the governor's primary in South Carolina, Terry Branstad in the Iowa gubernatorial race, and in Arkansas, Cecil Bledsoe in the Republican primary for a U.S. House seat. What does that say about Palin's influence in the Republican Party?
Oh, I think it reinforces the fact that Sarah Palin is someone who connects with voters, and particularly with core Republican voters who are inclined to vote in primaries, turn out for a primary. I've never understood really the elite media and the punditocracies. They just do not understand Sarah Palin, and she drives them crazy, which makes me happy. And I think that's how a lot of voters in the Republican primaries here. She's got a lot of common sense. She connects with people's everyday concerns about the direction of our government, the state of our economy, and the nature of our society today. And she's willing to shake things up, and she's willing to take a stand. And sometimes she's, it's hard to predict where she's going to throw her support. She's obviously helped anti-establishment candidates gain some ground, but at the same time, has also supported candidates that are seen as the establishment favorite. So I think she is, misunderstood by much of the media and political elite in this country, and well understood by rank-and-file voters.
All right, turning back to the Democrats, Blanche Lincoln pulls it out and defeats challenger Bill Halter, despite the multi-millions poured into Halter's campaign by labor unions, most notably the 2 big government worker unions. What's your read on the outcome there?
Well, I was surprised. It's a little harder for me to, read the tea leaves of a Democratic primary than a Republican primary. I just know Republican primary voters so much, better. But I think in this instance, the fact is that, Blanche Lincoln does have a constituency in Arkansas in the Democratic Party. I suspect she was helped by former President Clinton's vigorous campaigning for her at the end. And he could be more helpful to her than President Obama can. But the fact is, in running for that party's nomination in a competitive primary, Blanche Lincoln had to move very far to the left. She had to embrace the liberal agenda of President Obama, who got 38% of the vote in Arkansas, by the way, while carrying the country by 7 percentage points. So I think that regardless of her winning the primary, that's likely to be her last election victory this cycle.
All right, let's talk about that. Republican John Boozman, her opponent in November. How do you size up Boozman's chances of beating Lincoln?
Well, he's got double-digit leads, almost 20 percentage point leads over her in the head-to-head polls in Arkansas right now. I think to the extent that, I'm respectful of voters, and voters get to decide, and elections aren't decided until Election Day. But if there's any race that you can kind of put in the decided category today, it's the Arkansas Senate race.
Ed Gillespie, as always, thanks so much for sharing your insight with us here at Newsmax. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.